perilous times shall come. In the last days, dangerous times will come. In the last days. The Bible did not give a marker as to where you will count the end part of the last days, but it gave the beginning part of the last days. The beginning part of the last days is Hebrews 1:2. God has in these last days spoken unto us by His Son. When Jesus Christ was revealed, when He became a man, that was the beginning of the last days. So that was 2,000 years ago. But going towards the end is the end part of the last days, meaning 2,000 years ago up to the present time is the last days. But please take note, the last days has a last hour. This is a biblical term. This is not a term coined by Hollywood or theologians. This is a biblical term. The last days has a last hour. What is the last hour? 1 John chapter 2 verse 18. John the Beloved speaking. Children, it is the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come, therefore we know that it is the last hour. The last days has a last hour, and the marker or symptom or characteristic of the last hour is the coming of the Antichrist. We will have a portion here in this slide tonight for tracking the entry of the appearance of the Antichrist. Please just relax. The word of the Lord has big comfort for those who know Him. But we need to get this message across. Where did we get the idea or the term end times? Where is that found in the Bible? One of the passages is Daniel chapter 12 verse 4. You, O Daniel, close the book, close the words of the book, seal the book, even to the time of the end. Time of the end or end times, that is where we get this term. Okay, so now we go into our business tonight. Okay, what are these signs that we need to watch? 5 groupings of the signs, 5 clusters. There are natural signs, signs involving the natural physical world, the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, the seas. There are political signs, signs in the relations of the nations. We will look at Egypt, Syria, Israel, the Middle East. There are spiritual and moral signs. We will look at the entertainment industry. We will look at all the other things that are happening in the moral, cultural values of the people. There is the super sign, the nation of Israel, and there is the coming of the Antichrist and the system of the 666. We will go through this in random order as the Spirit of the Lord shows us. First, let's look at the natural signs. Some of the natural signs, because there are so many, I just selected a few for lack of time. The Lord said in Matthew 24, when He was asked, what shall be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? The Lord gave one of the signs in verse 7, there shall be famines and earthquakes in diverse or in different places. Another sign that He gave in the physical world is the tsunami and storm surge season, which He suggests in Luke 21:25 when He said, there shall be perplexity and anguish among the nations because of the roaring and the tossing of the sea. The sea will be so unruly in the last days, towards the last hour. Watch out for the movement of the wind and the waves and the seas. And then the Lord said in Luke 21:25, there shall be signs in the sun, the moon, and the stars. The sun, the moon, and the stars. Okay, let's start with earthquakes. People say, there have always been earthquakes ever since. Ever since time began, there have always been earthquakes. But here is the interesting thing. Few years ago, the scientists have noted that the occurrence, the frequency, and intensity of earthquakes have been increasing. For example, between 1986 to 1996, 10-year period, there have been 15 earthquakes beyond 7.0 on the Richter scale. But then, in the next 10-year period, 1997 to 2007, there have been 99 earthquakes of 7.0 or greater magnitude. 6-fold increase. In the words scientists, this is a stark increase. This is a sharp increase. Just 2 10-year period, 86 to 1986 to 1986 to 1996, and 1997 to 2007, a six-fold increase. Now, some skeptics or some of those who are not sure whether they want to believe this or not, they would say, is this just a case of increased occurrence or increased monitoring? There may be an increase in the record because the scientific monitoring method have improved. Okay, because they said, according to the record, the 6.99 magnitude earthquakes recorded from 1863 to 1900, or 38 years period, have been 12. The 1901 to 1938 have been 53. 1939 to 1976 have been 71. They are all 38-year periods. And 1977 to 2014 have been 164. They said, we are not ready to accept this because the monitoring system in the previous years have not been so good as the present time. Okay, even if you are to admit that, and may I present this to you as a case, as if you are the judges and I am arguing my case, you still have to contend with this new phenomenon. I challenge you to Google this in your laptops, in your computers, the phenomenon of the earthquake swarm. This is a new phenomenon. They did not know this before. What in the world is an earthquake swarm? It is a cluster of dozens of little earthquakes occurring at the same time, which have started to disturb the scientists because they are not quite able to explain it. They're trying to study it. Okay. As early as recent as October 22, 2013, there have been noticed earthquake swarms in several areas of the world. And they studied this and they discovered that there is a 1 to 3 magnitude 3.0 earthquake or larger occurring yearly from 1975 to 2008. But it grew to 40 from the period 2009 to mid-2013. Earthquake swarms. These are some of the places where earthquake swarms have been experienced. Mexicali, along the Cerro Prieto Fault, over 500 quakes recorded in February 2008. In Christchurch, New Zealand, February 2011 to December 2011, 500 earthquakes. 2013, Santa Cruz Islands, so many earthquakes occurring at the same time. One explanation given is this phenomenon. The earth is wobbling. The earth is like a tire, the bolts of which have not been tightly put, and so that when it is traveling, it is, in the dialect, naga-utso. It's wobbling, and it is creating the happening of earthquakes at the same time. Remember, Jesus said, one of the signs of the times, he did not say earthquakes. He said, earthquakes in diverse places. He said, simultaneous earthquakes happening at the same time in many places. That was the sign. Not the earthquake per se, but the simultaneity of the earthquakes at the same time in the same place. And this is picked up by the scientists as partly caused by a phenomenon called earth wobble. Earthquake swarms around the world in the same time frame because of the earth wobble. And here is a more disturbing phenomenon. They improved from earthquake swarm to earthquake storm. When you go home tonight, you check in your laptops, in your internets, these things that I'm telling you about. Then you will ask me, Brother Lyndon, why are you into these things? Because the Negros Island House of Prayer, we have accepted our role to be watchmen of our city. It is our job to watch so that we will know how to pray. We are watching almost every day earthquake trends, weather forecasts, so that we will defend this city in prayer. So that is why we are getting educated with all these new terms. Earthquake storm, check it out in the Wikipedia. It is a recently proposed theory given by Stanford professor of geophysics Amos Noor in 2000, where he proposes that earthquakes happen where one triggers a series of other land earthquakes along the same plate boundary as the stress transfers along the fault system. I want you to imagine a broken glass. The crack is just like this, and then it spreads like this, and it spreads like that, and it spreads like that. Earthquake faults are traveling and extending. And when they hit here and they hit there, they trigger another hit there, and another hit there, and another hit there. Example, the Turkish earthquake in the North Anatolian Fault. If you look at this graph, the fault was here, just seen in 1939. It kept extending its crack. It traveled. In 1942, there was another one here. 1943, 1951, 1957, 1967, 1999. It kept on traveling and traveling like a crack of a glass that is traveling. When you read something like this, you remember the words of Jesus. Before I come, one of the signs of my coming is there will be earthquakes in diverse places. And science is catching up with the explanation. They're coming up with the explanation. When Jesus said simultaneous earthquakes, now they're coming up with terms like earthquake swarms and earthquake storms. Here is the active fault and trench map of the Philippines. That is why, if you're a Filipino Christian, you must be passionate for prayer. Because if you look at your country is a prime candidate for earthquake storm because we have so many cracks. We should really be in prayer every day because there is no government and there is no technology, there is no science, there is no whatever that can prevent an earthquake. Only God can prevent an earthquake. This is the Philippine Deep, the deepest depth in the world. This is the Mariana Trench, 11 kilometers deep. So when you stand here on the edge of the Mariana Trench, you remove all the water, look at the bottom, that is 11 kilometers deep. That is how precarious the Philippine archipelago is standing on. And that is why you must understand the reason for praying. The reason for praying. There are many reasons for prayer, but this is one of those reasons. We were hit already by earthquakes in our own backyard. Gihulngan, Negros Oriental, February 6, 2012. This is Bohol earthquake, 2013. And what is interesting about this Bohol earthquake was that they designated the Bohol fault line as a new fault. Meaning to say, our field folks did not know that the fault was there because their map is 3, 4, 5 years old. And they did not know that the crack kept on traveling. So when the earthquake happened, then they said, oh, there is a fault. Precisely because the scientists are explaining that the faults are not dormant. They do not stay the way they are. They keep on cracking and extending and extending and extending. And that is why when the Bohol earthquake happened, look at this drop of the ground. This ground here rose up for several kilometers. And this is how they describe it in the newspaper. They heard an explosion which sounded like a thunderclap, and the ground cracked open, and smoke and the stench of sulfur spreading, one side started to rise. That is in our own backyard, in a place where our own government technician said there is no fault there.